In a historic turn of events, the state of Alabama carried out the execution of inmate Kenneth Smith on Thursday night, marking the first documented use of nitrogen gas in the nation for capital punishment. Smith, who had received the death penalty for his role in a 1988 murder-for-hire case, had previously survived a botched lethal injection attempt. The decision to employ nitrogen gas as the execution method has ignited a contentious debate surrounding its perceived level of cruelty. Smith's legal defense team made several 11th-hour attempts to halt the execution, filing appeals with a federal court on Wednesday and the U.S. Supreme Court on both Wednesday and Thursday, all of which were ultimately unsuccessful. The constitutional implications of the execution method's cruelty became a focal point in the debate. Dr. Joel Zivit, an associate professor of anesthesiology and surgery at Emory University, emphasized that the U.S. Constitution prohibits cruel punishment, stating, "Execution is a unique form of punishment, and, as per the U.S. Constitution, it cannot be carried out cruelly." Therefore, the central question remains, is execution by nitrogen gas inherently cruel? The shift to using nitrogen gas as an execution method represents a departure from the more commonly employed lethal injection, which has been the predominant practice for approximately 40 years and is widely utilized across the 27 states where capital punishment is legal. This transition has reignited scrutiny over the ethical and legal dimensions of the execution process in the United States. Around 2009, the drugs used to carry out lethal injections became harder to access, and states began turning to alternative drugs, a shift that has been tied to a surge of complications with the procedure. That's what happened when Alabama first tried to execute Smith in November 2022, and officials were unable to set an intravenous line before the execution warrant expired. Only 3 states, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Mississippi, have approved the use of nitrogen gas for capital punishment, and experts say there is no real blueprint for the execution method. Alabama has published a protocol for the procedure, though it contains redactions the state says are meant to maintain security. How does it work? Alabama officials plan to use a mask to administer the nitrogen to Smith. Smith likely would have been strapped down when this occurred, Zivit said before the execution. Nitrogen hypoxia occurs when a high concentration of the gas is inhaled, replacing oxygen in the body and causing death. The process essentially disables the respiratory system, said Dr. Jonathan Groner, a professor of surgery at The Ohio State University College of Medicine. Some officials say that a person would likely lose consciousness shortly into the procedure, making it more humane than other execution methods. However, doctors have said that they cannot pinpoint if or when a person will lose consciousness when exposed to high nitrogen gas concentrations. On the evening of the execution, the process commenced at 7:53 p.m. Central Time, with Commissioner John Hamm of the Alabama Department of Corrections confirming Smith's death at 8:25 p.m. Central Time. Nitrogen flowed for approximately 15 minutes during this period, and Hamm noted that the execution unfolded as expected, with no deviations from their anticipated outcomes. Media witnesses reported that Smith appeared conscious for several minutes into the execution. Subsequently, he experienced shaking and writhing on the gurney for about 2 minutes, followed by several minutes of deep breaths. Eventually, Smith's breathing slowed until it was no longer perceptible to the media witnesses. When questioned about the observed movements and breath patterns, Commissioner Hamm explained that Smith seemed to be holding his breath, and there were indications of involuntary movements and agonal breathing, a gasping phenomenon commonly seen in individuals nearing death. Hamm clarified that such reactions were anticipated based on prior research into nitrogen hypoxia. This month, experts from the United Nations expressed concern that Kenneth Smith's execution using nitrogen gas might be a form of torture. The experts released a statement, saying they were worried that nitrogen hypoxia could lead to a painful and humiliating death. Before the execution, doctors couldn't predict exactly what would happen to Smith, but there were several troubling possibilities. One concern was that if the mask used during the procedure wasn't tightly secured, oxygen could leak in, potentially prolonging the process. Experts pointed out that even when using 100% non-rebreather face masks on patients, there's usually some leakage. There was uncertainty about whether Smith would peacefully go to sleep, as some experts doubted this outcome. The lack of oxygen could lead to seizures, which are known to occur in individuals experiencing hypoxia. Another unsettling possibility was that the person being executed might vomit into the mask, leading to choking or asphyxiation if the vomit was inhaled into the lungs. Due to concerns about Smith's vomiting tendencies, the Department of Corrections adjusted his last meal schedule. Even if a person is fasting, they can still vomit stomach fluids, which, if aspirated, could cause lung damage due to stomach acid. The emotional toll on Smith leading up to the execution was also a factor. Experts noted that stress, anxiety, or fear could have adverse effects, as individuals in extreme fear may respond differently to anesthetics. Despite this, there were no plans to provide Smith with anything to help him relax before the execution. In contrast to most lethal injections, where an anesthetic is administered first to render the person unconscious, the nitrogen gas method raised concerns about potential complications. Increased stress has been linked to severe medical events like heart attacks, as exemplified by a 2014 botched execution in Oklahoma. Experts cautioned that if the procedure failed to kill Smith, complications could have resulted in injuries or serious brain damage. The events in the Alabama execution chamber were seen as having potential implications for other death row prisoners in the state and beyond. Feel free to leave any comments about this video, and please give us a thumbs up.